Well, as Joe Biden crashes and burns in our polls, and there's a lot of angst inside the Democratic Party about what the hell are we going to do in 2024 if he doesn't run, there's a spotlight of Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg. So Washington Post is beginning to put this, some of the whispers are beginning to come out of the edge saying Harris and Buttigieg under the spotlight amid uncertainty around Joe Biden's future. And the more and more that this comes out, Krystal, the lower that Biden continues to sink in the polls, and the more jockeying that happens behind the scenes in the Washington Post pages, in the New York Times, and more over who's the better successor, the more interesting it's going to get. And I just think it's hilarious because, as you and I both know, neither of these people is going to win national office. There's just no way. I mean, they both crashed and burned in the Democratic primary. Buttigieg less so than Kamala Harris, but not saying much whenever you get what did he get, 7th or something in the South Carolina?
When we got to South Carolina, he got, I believe, 3% of the black vote.
Right, yeah. I hear that, that's an important constituency.
Of a really significant constituency.
Yes. I hear that.
He's got a great coalition there to build on.
Right, I heard that they do vote in the Democratic primary. Seems something important if you were to cover that, honestly, something that we never particularly did during the Democratic primary. But the more that we're seeing this, DC is really just freaking out over the fact that they have Kamala Harris on the one hand, the most unpopular vice president in modern American history. And then you have Pete Buttigieg, who slightly more popular, but still would easily lose a national election. Probably could not even win his own party's primary. And there's jockeying, Krystal, amongst both of their aides for who's going to look best coming out of the Biden administration. Buttigieg giving everybody a run for his money by taking 2 months off for paternity leave while we have the middle of a supply chain crisis. Kamala by just being odious generally, in the national spotlight, and also being set up to fail by the Biden team.
Yeah.
So nobody's coming out of this thing looking very good, at least so far.
I keep thinking about, we covered last week this Jackman study where they were evaluating in a really unique way the different types of candidates and who actually has broad appeal among the broad working class that's remotely gettable by a Democratic Party candidate. And what they found was the absolute worst thing to be was the woke moderate, which is exactly, the woke corporatist is exactly what Kamala and Pete fall into. That's the quadrant. And so it just shows you, I don't even know if it's how brain dead Democratic Party elites are. They had to be pretty brain dead to put Kamala in this position to start with as vice president. The media tried to make her happen. No, it didn't work. Nobody wanted her. And then they go ahead and you guys just didn't really give her a chance. So we're going to put her in as vice president, knowing that by doing that, you are setting her up to be the next Democratic nominee, whether if it's in 4 years or 8 years, either way, you're clearly saying this is the future of the party. And then predictably, she's utterly crashing and burning. As bad as Biden's poll numbers are, hers are even worse. Her office is apparently rife with dysfunction.
Oh, yeah.
Which has been a consistent theme, again, all predictable, consistent theme since she started in politics and also manifested on her presidential campaign, is this dysfunctional staffing issues, and the family gets involved in these different fiefdoms, and she's way too cautious, and all of these things are consistent problems throughout her career. And so now they're thinking oh God, can we swap this person out? And instead of reaching for someone who might actually have broad appeal, they like Pete.
Yes.
And why do they like Pete? Well, because Pete is very comfortable. Pete is a guarantee that, all of the sort of Democratic consultant industrial complex and the existing donor class are still going to be able to maintain their slots. And ultimately, that's why I say I don't know if I want to say that they're brain dead, because ultimately they care a lot more about that than they care about winning political office.
Oh, yeah.
So Pete is a guarantee that they keep their spots, and that's what ultimately matters the most.
The really crazy part, too, is how openly top Democrats are talking about the possibility of Biden not running. I mean, we're talking about his former campaign chair. Let's put this on the screen.
Yeah.
Chris Dodd, who, very longtime friend of Biden. Look at what he's saying there, quoted in the New York Times. I'm hoping the president runs for re-election. But for whatever reason that might not be the case, it's hard to believe there wouldn't be a short list without Kamala's name on it. She's the vice president of the United States. I'm hoping, once again, This guy literally chaired the vice presidential search committee, was one of the closest confidants of the president. You might not remember him, but Chris Dodd was a powerhouse here in D.C. for a long time. I mean, he was a senator from Connecticut. His dad is a famous guy, I believe he's in politics as well. Major political institution in the Democratic Party, goes back with Biden many, many, many years. And so for him to come out and say, I'm hoping that he runs for re-election, I mean, that stuff is crazy. I can tell you that under the Trump years, you were absolutely shut out if you were to raise the possibility that Trump was not going to run for re-election. The people were like, they're like, anybody in the Trump orbit who starts to say stuff like that, tell them to shut up. It's not part of it. They would get yelled at, all of that, because it was considered such an assurance.
Well, because you instantly become a lame duck.
Right, and you're feeding all of this, in the meat grinder of like, well, what's going to happen? It's just chaos, that the fact that he can't even assure the people closest to him that he's gonna run for re-election. I think that's the most stunning part when I see that Chris Dodd quote in particular.
I mean, all you have to do is look at him when he steps into the public eye and see that, for him to run for another 4 years on top of this, that would be a lot. This is a man who, when he considered running back in 2016, thought about doing it under the pledge of I'm only gonna serve one term.
Right.
So now here we are in 2020, he wins without the pledge, but I mean, I think the writing on the wall for a lot of people that, he may not be up to it for a second term. At the same time, it is interesting. And for the people who are like Kamala stans, which is,
they all live here in Washington.
They all live here. They're very on Twitter, but
Right.
they do exist. I do think that it's fair when they say that she really hasn't been given sort of easy or she just hasn't been set up for success by the Biden White House. And they're contrasting that, on the other hand, with Pete, who not only, he takes his months off, immediately everybody rushes to his defense the minute he's attacked by Tucker and by others.
Right.
And they're also handing him hundreds of billions of dollars as transportation secretary to effectively do with as he pleases. We have this Business Insider, or now they're just Insider. It still says Business Insider, though, there. Anyway, Insider. Pete Buttigieg is about to become the most powerful transportation secretary ever. So
that's terrifying, actually. But
in the what should be, relatively non-controversial realm of transportation secretary, and he's given all this money to play with. Meanwhile, they're either feeding Kamala to the wolves by like, hey, why don't you just handle that immigration situation down there? No big deal.
Right.
And giving her no power to actually do anything about it. Or they're literally sticking her like at the kids' table for that space, whatever thing she was doing that was equal.
With all the child actors.
With all the child actors.
Yeah.
So,
there ain't no winners in this game.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, listen, no matter what portfolio they handed Kamala Harris, I don't think it was going to be a real home run here. But it does seem like the White House is putting their thumb on the scale in terms of who they want to sort of promote and elevate and really see as the future of the party at this point.
I think that's right.
Very telling. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll have more for you later. Hey, guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.